Jim Bob. That's what everybody calls me in the small town where I grew up. My family is rich, and we have been rich ever since my great-grandfather opened the first cotton gin in the area. A few years later, he would open the first bank in the county. Much later, my grandfather would open a Ford dealership. By the time I came along, our name was well known. We lived in a mansion on 120 acres near town and drove new cars every year. I was a little chunky, so I did not have a girlfriend in high school, but that changed in college. Girls seemed to like riding around in a new Mustang with a guy who always had a pocket full of money. There was one girl that I really liked. Her name was Sue Wilson. She was a cute, light brown-haired girl with pretty blue eyes. We started dating my senior year and were going steady by Christmas. We never slept together. She wanted to remain a virgin until her wedding night. I respected that. Even when we drove to Panama City for spring break, there was no intimacy. Soon after I graduated, we flew to Vegas and got married. It was a surprise to everyone. Dad said he would have paid for a wedding here in town, but Sue and I did not want a big wedding. We loved each other and did not want all the drama associated with a big wedding. After a week in Hawaii, we came home and moved into the house with my parents. Life was good. 6 months after our first boy was born, tragedy struck. My parents were killed by a drunk driver. Since I was the only child, I inherited everything. The bank, the cotton gin, and the car dealership became my responsibility. I think I handled it pretty well. Besides my education, I had spent lots of time working with my father learning the businesses. 2 years later, my second son was born. I loved my life and the family I had been blessed with. It was a year later that Sue asked me what I thought about her getting a boob job. I was all for it. The 2 babies had done a number on her once beautiful breasts and they could use some help. We found a surgeon, and she went from having sagging 32C cup breasts to 36D cup breasts that stood proudly on her chest. But that operation changed more than just her bra size. I noticed her clothes changed. Her dresses now had plunging necklines. Her skirts were a little shorter. Her swimsuits went from one-piece to string bikinis. Some were even thongs. Her personality also changed. She spent less time with the kids. She became flirtier. Men took notice. Within a year, we had a nanny. Sue started having lunch with her girlfriends. Then it was drinks with them at the club until midnight. One night after Sue left for a night out with her friends, I checked the GPS I had installed on her Lincoln. It was parked at a motel over in the next county. She was cheating. I confronted her with what I knew the next morning. She did not even try to lie. She admitted the affair and then laughed at me. The way I see it, Jim Bob, is you have 2 choices. This is a no-fault state, and we did not sign a prenup. You divorce me, and you will pay me alimony and child support for the next 15 or 20 years. You'll see your boys every 2 weeks on the weekend while I live in this house. I can even move one of my lovers in here to help me raise your sons. The other choice is just to put up with my flings. Who knows, in 5 or 10 years, I'll get it out of my system. I think the second is the best for you. I'll still make love to you whenever you want, no problem there. And I promise to be discreet. What do you say? Well, to make a long story short, I agreed with the second choice. That was until today. I came home, and just as I was pulling up, I saw a car leaving. In it was a black man. I thought we had agreed that she could have her affairs, but always at a motel in another county. I even let her go on a vacation last year to New York. She was gone for 2 weeks. No problem. But now this. At our home, and as I was to find out in a few minutes, in our bed. I entered the house fuming mad. Sue was changing the sheets on the bed. I exploded. What the hell, Sue? In our house and in our bed. Calm down. This was the first time here at the house. Leroy did not have a lot of time and I was horny. The kids are in school and I did not think you would find out. So what? You know I fool around. Get naked and I'll give you sloppy seconds if you want. And who the hell is this Leroy and how long has it been going on? He's just a guy I met at a bar about 4 months ago. What does it matter? Are you upset because he's black or because I slept with him in our bed? I am mad because of everything. I want you to stop. I want our life back to where it was before you started this running around. Jim Bob, we have talked about this. I am not stopping. You can pack your things and move out. File for divorce if you want. But remember what I said would happen if you do. I was frozen in place. She was right, I would lose my sons and my ancestral home. She would be awarded a huge amount of alimony and child support. I'm trapped. I did not even answer her. I turned and walked out of the room thinking she was forgetting about another option. The one where I confront the lying, cheating woman. I drove to the city cafe and ordered a cup of coffee with a piece of apple pie. Sheriff Bull walks in and sits down at my table. From the perspective of Sheriff Bull, now is as good of time as any to introduce myself. My real name is Richard Stanton, but everyone calls me Bull. I got that nickname about the time I entered high school. I was big for my age. I was 6'3" tall and weighed over 200 pounds by the time I was 14. Today I stand 6'5" in my work boots and weigh in at around 245. The name Bull has stuck for my entire life. I knew Jim Bob in high school. He was a fat little rich kid that everybody picked on. I decided he might be useful later in life, so I befriended that little wimp. I started protecting him from the high school bullies. Soon nobody picked on him anymore. Like in the saying, rich kids go to college, poor kids go to war. Well, that's what happened to me. I did 3 years in the army as an MP, then came home after a tour in Baghdad. I went to junior college and got a degree in law enforcement, then a job with the sheriff's department in the small county where we all grew up. I had always wanted to be a cop. I had an uncle who was a cop in a big city, and when he visited, he had lots of stories. Some of my father did not like his brother telling. You see, Uncle Tim was a corrupt cop. He boasted about shaking down drug dealers, getting favors from women in exchange for letting them work in his area, and accepting money from rich people to avoid writing tickets. Then there were stories of reporting less money from busts he made. Even though my dad did not agree, I think he envied his brother. This guy retired and moved to Florida with a pension and enough money to live the rest of his life on. While my parents were married over 49 years, Uncle Tim never married. I wanted to be just like him. He was my hero. I was in my 4th year as a sheriff's deputy and moving up in the department when it happened. There was a bank robbery in town. The sheriff and the lieutenant were the first on the scene. A gunfight started as the robbers exited the bank and the sheriff was killed before he even got a shot off. The lieutenant was badly wounded. He would never walk again. I got there just in time to see what was going on. The robbers were in the getaway car and starting to pull away. I slammed my patrol car into theirs. They were trapped with my car pinning them on one side and a telephone pole on the other. They were dazed as I got out and walked up to the front of their car. No, I did not read them their rights. I shot both through the windshield with my .357 service revolver. The official statement said they ignored my demand that they put their hands on the dashboard and were scrambling for their guns. I was hailed as a hero and the county commissioners appointed me as acting sheriff until the next election, which I won easily. Now let's talk about Sue Smallwood and Leroy Jenkins, or LJ as he is known on the street. I knew Sue was cheating on Jim Bob, everybody in town did. What I did not know was that she had taken up with Leroy. That is until the DEA agents came into my office with information about Leroy and his current lover, Sue Smallwood. The DEA wanted to turn Leroy and needed my help. That's the way it works in the drug business. Catch a little fish, then he helps you catch a bigger fish so he does not spend the rest of his life in jail. Since Leroy was operating in my county, and without paying me for protection, I gladly agreed to help. I secured a warrant and placed listening devices in Jim Bob's house by using one of my contacts with the cable company. While I could not see her and Leroy, it did not take a genius to know what was going on. I listened that afternoon as the two lovers made plans to combine a night on the town with one of his deliveries. But what was a lot more interesting was the conversation between Sue and Jim Bob after he came home. He needs my help. Sue had lied to him about this being the first time Leroy was at their house. I had recorded 3 other conversations between the two lovers, and who knows how many times he was there before I started listening. I had a plan in mind when I pulled out a chair and sat down with him at the city cafe. I know what's going on with Sue and Leroy Jenkins. How? He asked. Leroy's in trouble with the feds. I was brought in and Sue's name came up. I'm going to kill that bitch, he answered. Calm down, Jim Bob. I have a better way. For the next 15 minutes, I explained what I can do. My last sentence was, but it is going to cost you. How much? He asked. The way I figure it, she would get a minimum of $5,000 a month in alimony and about $2,500 a month in child support, which would last for at least 15 years. The alimony could go on forever. I'm thinking $100,000 in cash and one of those new Ford 4-wheel drive pickups every couple of years would cover it. He shouted deal and almost jumped across the table to shake my hand. Shit. I should have asked for $250,000. I'll have to remember that next time. Go home and act like everything is fine. She is going to tell you that she is going to be gone this weekend. Actually, she is spending it with Leroy at his cabin at the lake. That's where I'll get them." Again, we shook hands and I left. I did wonder if he could pull it off. Probably. He has known of her cheating for years. One more night of pretending should be no problem. Back to the perspective of Jim Bob. Saturday morning, I was making breakfast for my sons when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, so I did not pick up. After breakfast, I was cleaning the kitchen when it rang again. I still did not pick up. It rang again with the same unknown number as I was about to start lunch. This time I answered. "Jim Bob, why did you not answer my earlier calls?" "Sue?" "I am sorry, the caller's ID said unknown number and I was busy with the boys. Why aren't you using your phone?" "Jim Bob, honey, there has been a terrible misunderstanding. Sheriff Bull has me in jail." "What? Why?" I try to act surprised. "I'll explain it all when you get here. Please hurry. I've been here all night and I want to get home. I'll be there as soon as I can get somebody to look after the boys. Sit tight and don't talk to anyone until I get there." I cut the call and started laughing hysterically. The boys wanted to know what was so funny. "Mommy just told Daddy a joke," I replied. I waited until 3 p.m. to call the lady we used as a babysitter. She was there in 30 minutes and I drove to the jail. I met Bull in his office with the door shut for about 15 minutes, then was shown into a visitor's room. Sue was behind a glass and picked up the telephone as I sat down. "What took you so long?" "Mrs. Harrison was doing her weekly shopping. I had to wait until she finished." "Jim Bob, you have to get me out of here. I need a shower and I want to see the boys. Now she is worried about her sons?" "I have my doubts about that. I talked to Bull before I came in here. Sue, you are in a lot of trouble. You were found in a house full of drugs. Your fingerprints are everywhere. Your drug tests came back positive. Bull says you were completely out of it when they found you and Leroy in bed. Naked. In bed with a black drug dealer. Then there's the gun they found in the glove box of your car along with 6 bags of cocaine. Sue, what is going on?" "This is all a big mistake. Leroy and I had driven to Memphis to go dancing. They were checking everybody before letting them in the club, so Leroy handed me his pistol and I put it in the glove box. We were going to deliver the coke to one of his clients, but he was not at the club last night. I took them out of my purse and put them in the glove box," she replied. "So Leroy was driving your car, and you had the drugs in your purse?" "Yes. He likes to drive the Lincoln when we go out. In the club we danced and... Okay, I admit I did a line of coke. First time, I swear. Then we drove back to Leroy's place up at the lake. I think I did another line. I can't remember. We were in bed making love when Bull and his men busted down the door and caught us. Jim Bob, it was horrible. I was naked and everyone saw me. They all watched as I dressed. After I was brought here, I was put in a cell with 2 other women. I think they were involved in the wrong kind of business. I told them what happened and they said Bull had no right to bust in like he did. I know nothing about Leroy's drug business, and that gun is not mine. I think if you hire a good attorney, I will be released this afternoon and all charges dropped. Please. First of all, no matter what those jailhouse attorneys told you, Bull had every right to bust down that door. He had a no-knock warrant. They have found your fingerprints on an illegal gun. It was reported stolen a year ago. If there is a body on that gun, you will be charged as an accessory to murder. Not true, but I want to give her something to think about. Your fingerprints are all over that house, even on the packages of coke in your car. Of course, your drug tests came back positive. You are in big trouble, Sue. On top of everything, your case is going to be handled by Judge Parker. His daughter died of a drug overdose 3 years ago. He is very hard on drug dealers and their associates. You will be going before him Monday morning for a bail hearing. Until then, you might as well get comfortable. Jim Bob, we can get through this. Get me a good attorney. Then when I make bail, we'll work this out. Leroy will testify I had nothing to do with his drug business. When I get out, you and I can start over like you want. I'll quit running around. Stop lying. First of all, Leroy has been under surveillance for over 3 months. The feds know he was at our house a number of times. They wired our house, so all the conversations you have had with Leroy at our house are recorded. Now you are asking for my help? What a joke. 3 days ago you wanted me to be your cuckold. Last night you were found high on coke and fucking a black coke dealer. I will not be at your bail hearing and I will not be getting you an attorney. You are on your own from this minute forward." I hung up the phone and walked out of the room. Sue was pounding on the glass, but I never looked back. 2 days later, she was served with divorce papers as she sat in jail unable to make the $250,000 bail. She never once called to talk to the boys or even asked about them to my knowledge. The district attorney offered her a deal: 3 years in state prison for women. She refused until she found out that Leroy was going to testify against his Mexican drug connection, and then he was going to do 3 years in a federal prison camp. Upon his release, he was going in the witness protection program. Sue decided she did not want him testifying at her trial. She was told by her public defender that if he lied under oath, his deal would be nullified. There was a lot more to the story of her and Leroy than she wanted to come out. Sue went before Judge Parker and ended up taking the deal. The surprise was the judge ordered her to have 2 years supervised probation after completing her sentence, and during that time she was to enroll in a drug rehabilitation program. Our divorce flew through the court system. Sue was present in the courtroom when this judge awarded me full custody of the boys. There would be no alimony, and Sue could apply for visitation privileges when she got out of prison, but the visits would have to be supervised. The judge noted that she had a drug problem and would be attending a drug rehabilitation program. Sue did not take this well and screamed that this was all my fault. She would see me in hell for letting this happen to her. What kind of sick logic is that? She gets caught high, in bed with a black drug dealer and with a gun and coke in her car, and it's my fault. The judge added a permanent restraining order preventing her from coming within 1,000 feet of me, my house, or one of my businesses. She was led away screaming. From the perspective of Sheriff Bull, I had the arrest warrant 2 days before I served it on LJ. I wanted him and Sue to be caught together. The gun and her fingerprints on the bags of coke just added to her problems and made the divorce from Jim Bob easier. I love this truck. It has all the bells and whistles. I take it up to the lake and do a little fishing whenever I get the chance. Sometimes I even take one of my girlfriends up to the cabin that once belonged to Leroy. I bought it when the feds auctioned it off under the federal forfeiture policy. Life is good. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.